This week, we recap the Global Cyber Innovation Summit that was held in Baltimore last week. In the Leadership and Communication segment, how to build a startup, you don't have to be nice to be respected, Boeing and the importance of encouraging employees to speak up, and more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. The question is simple. Have any of the systems on my network been compromised? The answer is harder than it should be. Enter AI Hunter. Active Countermeasures has automated and streamlined techniques used by the best pen testers and threat hunters in the industry to create AI Hunter, a network threat hunting solution that does the first pass of a hunt for you to identify systems that are most likely to be compromised and scores the results on a scale from 0 to 100. You can then research those systems in depth with AI Hunter. Focus your valuable time on the systems that need your expertise with AI Hunter. Sign up for a personal demo today at securityweekly.com/ACM. How do you stay ahead of attackers while trying to maintain the strength of your current security posture? At Trusted Sec, they believe research goes hand in hand with security consulting. In addition to their established security offerings, they continually advance their own expertise with a dedicated, experienced research team led by Carlos Perez that works on short and long-term projects to assist their consultants during engagements, developing proprietary attack vectors and investigating new threats. Go to trustedsec.com/securityweekly to learn more about the pioneering research team at Trusted Sec. Security can't solve crucial problems when they have to wade through thousands of alerts a day. With ServiceNow, you can easily prioritize and respond to your most crucial business threats. That way you can go from overwhelmed to under control. ServiceNow brings security, risk, and IT together on one platform. Learn more at securityweekly.com/ServiceNow.
Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 127, recorded May 6, 2019. I am your host, Matt Alderman, here in Colorado, joined by my co-host, yes, two, Paul Asadorian and Jason Albuquerque in G-Unit Studio in Rhode Island.
What's up, Matt?
What's happening, Matt? How are you?
Yeah, so for viewers, one of the things we've been trying to do is get to a standard format of a host and two co-hosts, and Jason's going to join us on a more regular basis and help us talk this thing.
Absolute pleasure. You know, every time I've been on the show, I always ask for more. So the opportunity presented itself to be a permanent co-host here, and you know I would jump on that. So thank you guys for offering it up.
Thank you for accepting. It's awesome, too. Yeah, it's really awesome.
My pleasure.
Yeah, it's always nice to have a practicing CISO with us to kind of vet some of the stuff and really help the
Keep
rest
us in
of
line, right?
And vice versa. I need somebody to tell me, here's how it really is.
Well, too, as CTO and CEO of a smaller company, we wear a lot of hats.
Sure.
So your focus in the CISO area, I think, is really good.
Awesome.
So,
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm writing code. You know, Matt's doing a lot of spreadsheets and all that stuff. So it's fun, though.
Yes, it is. But this will help us.
For sure.
All right. Let's get through the announcements and then we can jump into our topic. Security Weekly is returning to Vegas this August for Black Hat and DEF CON. If you would like to request a briefing or sponsor an interview on site at Black Hat, please go to securityweekly.com/booking. Yes, that's a new URL. We've kind of consolidated all of our booking requests under that new URL and submit your request there. Some of you told us that you're overwhelmed by the amount of content we distribute. In an attempt to make it a little easier for you to find what you're interested in, we've created our new listener interest list. Sign up for the list and select your interest by visiting securityweekly.com/subscribe and clicking the button to join the list. You can also now submit your suggestions for guests in our recently released guest suggestion form. Go to securityweekly.com/guests and enter your suggestions. All right, so let's dig into the topic. Unfortunately, our regular scheduled interview was canceled due to illness this morning, so I had to come up with a new topic so we can keep the show going. And this gives us the opportunity to recap the Global Cyber Innovation Summit, which was an invite-only event for CISOs and a number of both government and industry experts to talk about the future of security. Luckily, I was invited, attended the 2 days last week in Baltimore, where we had almost 200 CISOs in attendance across various industry segments. And so I wanted to summarize that, get some expert commentary from the crew in Rhode Island, and go from there.
Yeah, no, actually, I'm excited because I wasn't able to attend. So being able to get that recap from you is outstanding. So I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, the format was, the way they kind of brought this event up was thinking about Davos for security, right? How do you bring industry and government entities together and talk about some of the big challenges in the space? No vendor spin, right? I mean, this was not a vendor-sponsored event, so very different feel than a Black Hat or an RSA conference, right? It was industry experts coming together and talking about some very big topics. And I mean, it was jam-packed for 2 days. I told Sam it was like drinking through a fire hose. And it really was. I mean, just so much data. I've got 5 pages of notes sitting here in front of me that we're going to try to summarize in this segment.
Yeah, for me, those are the best conferences to go to. The one that you get so consumed that you're taking notes the entire time, right? There's so much value that you bring back that you're just consumed with it for the next 3 weeks. That information, going back to it and revisiting it. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and so as a CISO, Jason, what do you think some of those big topics would have been?
So, I mean, obviously, data security is massive, right? I mean, that's going to be a huge topic. Cloud security, massive topic that we need to talk about. I'm sure they went into the buzzwords of AI and how that plays into an organization.
You're reading from the show notes, aren't you?
Yeah, totally. Totally. No, but listen. And in all honesty, though, these are the things.
Yeah,
these are the things that are coming up in conversations when I sit at the Tech Collective Board of Directors and we're talking about cybersecurity.
Quantum computing, though.
Quantum computing is a myth for me right now.
Yeah.
It's one of those scenarios that in conversations, it's what's going to happen when. Right.
It reminds me of IPv6.
Totally, right? I mean, what's going to happen with that? So, yes, I can go on to IBM's website and jump on their quantum computing, and I don't know how many qubits it is right now, but it's nothing of relevance that we could use.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, for me, that's gray area. It's literally looking out. I'm not sure how many years they're projecting now, but it seems like they're saying 10 years every year. So it just in 10 years it'll be here. In 10 years it'll be here. So I'm not sure what you gathered from this conference, but when is it going to be here, Matt? In 10 years?
Yeah. So that was the interesting part, right? Because we've heard a lot about this hype. And the question is, when is it realistic?
Right.
And it depends on who you talk to. Again, we brought industry and government together. And the guy from the NSA is like, I don't see this being relevant for us. Now, this is the National Security Agency, right? He said at least 15 years for them to use anything relevant here. We had someone from AT&T who has actually a research group looking into quantum computing primarily for 2 use cases. One is quantum encryption keys, because they believe that there will be more pressure on decryption attacks, and so they see a potential use case for leveraging quantum for encryption keys, and then that would lay the foundation for a quantum network. That's where their research is going. But everybody 10 plus years out.
Yeah, they're still saying 15 years from now it's going to be relevant. We'll be having the conversation, right?
Yeah. So that's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
But Jason, quickly, we'll hit the other 3 because all 3 of these are interesting topics. What do you think's missing on that initial list I put together?
So let's see. What's missing here? The one thing that I see is completely missing. And within my organization, I call it the culture of the cyber warrior, is how do you get the human factor in play? Right? How do you make, and I call it the culture of the cyber warrior. I came in from the Marine Corps. And one of the things that I've took to heart, which is one of the foundations of the Marine Corps, is the fact that every Marine is a rifleman. So in my mind, every employee we have is a cyber warrior. They're the boots on the street that they can keep their eyes out and see what's happening out there, right? So I don't see a lot of the human factor here unless it's in the cyber resilience space. I'm not sure, but where's the human factor in all this?
Yeah, there's nothing about identity or user or authentication
Absolutely.
in here.
Yes, and that was the big one for me from a topic perspective. And I let Bob and the team know, right? Identity was identified as a big challenge, but yet we didn't really cover it in the panel discussions. And so I brought that up because I think identity user, the human element actually comes in a little bit in the espionage topic.
Sure. Okay.
And really great session from former FBI agent that was just mind-blowing and scary all at the same time, which we'll cover.
Sure.
But yeah, identity user was the big one for me that was kind of missing. Yeah. So on the topic of cloud and application, quickly, we had a panel with AWS, Google was on it, and then I can't remember who the other one was, but I pulled this really interesting stat I have to share with the audience because I think it's so important to think about, what we hear all the time about, security of the cloud, this, that, and the other thing. And the one stat that came out in this one panel discussion was of 1/4 of the public cloud breaches. So all breaches, 1/4 of them were in the public cloud, but 0 of them were due to the cloud provider.
Right.
It wasn't their infrastructure that was the cause of the breach.
Right. It was configuration of that, whatever, Azure instance, AWS instance. It's that age-old myth that if I put it in the cloud, it's going to be natively secure, right? I hear that a lot from customers. I hear that a lot from folks who are looking to migrate to the cloud, where they put it out there in Azure and they say Microsoft will take care of it all for me. Well, that's not the case, right? You have to go in there and you have to make sure for us using Office 365 as our corporate SharePoint repository, document repository, a main method of communication. We have to go in there and leverage the security tools that they have in there and compensate with other controls on top of it just to make sure we're securing it and we're hardening it down for the organization.
Cloud's great newer technology, right? I mean, the word new is kind of interesting in this context, but I think for many organizations, going from on-premises to the cloud with infrastructure or applications, it means a whole new infrastructure, right? It's kind of like if you hand someone a lightsaber with no training, they're probably going to cut off one of their appendages with it, right? And this is what's happening. They're adopting the cloud, and they're like basically cutting off their appendages because they haven't had enough experience in training and really experience too with managing all your systems and applications in this new environment. We've made mistakes pushing stuff to the cloud, and it's easy. It's way. I think what it is also is like PHP. It's way too easy to make a mistake that can hurt you in a security and risk context as well.
There's a myth that it's set it and forget it when you push it out to the cloud, and that can't be it. It's not at all. It's not even close. Not even close.
Yeah, and this was one of the big discussions was about the shared responsibility model. Where does the responsibility of the cloud provider stop and that of the company take over? And again, it depends on whether you're an infrastructure as a service or platform as a service.
Sure.
But the common theme is, look, it's your application at the end of the day. You have to put in the right application security controls and make sure that environment's configured and secured correctly. That's really the bulk of where these breaches are happening. It's either at the OS layer or it's at the application layer that are owned by the company, not the cloud provider, right? So a lot of time spent there.
Where does the container layer fit in? Like, do I need something such as Capsulate inside my container, protecting against Linux-based exploits and attacks, in addition to something from Aqua or Qualys or Twistlock inside my container, and then like something from Signal Sciences inside of my app? Do you see a convergence, Matt and Jason, on this? Or like as CISOs, like this is, do I need 3 different technologies here?
So everything to date, because of just the trust factor, I guess, is layers for me, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I'm happy when I start to see that layered security model, just because I don't have the confidence today that one technology is going to cover me.
It's true.
I don't have that confidence yet. I just don't.
And I think the way we're still deploying cloud is still some layers in it, right? You still may have an endpoint in play with the orchestrator and the containers running in the application. And so it may not be one solution. It may be a couple different solutions to protect those different layers.
Right.
So that was definitely a topic. modernize in place, right, is the new trend, where you basically take a legacy app, drop it in a container, and then be able to move it to the cloud, and then actually go through digital transformation later. So I think what we'll see a little bit, Paul, is more even legacy applications being containerized only for portability use cases to get them out of on-prem into the cloud.
Right.
And then they'll try to break them apart and get them more efficient from a productivity scalability perspective over time. But that's a major trend.
Actually exactly what we did with our internal application.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And not everyone agree. I bring up that approach, and not everyone agrees with it. Some, I think, really think you should start breaking apart the code and fixing your legacy code first before you make that push into the cloud. I'm kind of on the fence of, I like taking a legacy application, right, putting in a container. I think there's enough benefit and features there that help you to be able to do that first, and then start going back and breaking it apart and doing the development. But again, it's going to depend on a lot of factors, skill level of your developers, which cloud system you're in, what's your legacy application written in. All those are factors that are going to drive that decision. That CISOs are going to have to be involved 100%. From a security perspective in this decision. Now, as a CISO, if you come to me and say, I'm going to take this legacy application that's on premises and I'm going to push it up into the cloud, usually I think there's enough benefit to be like, yes, go do that, right? Gets it off my legacy infrastructure and on something that's a lot more fluid and mobile.
It minimizes the threat vector at the end of the day, because it's a legacy app on a legacy platform, on a legacy OS. It's something that's end of life, end of support. You can't patch anymore. Right. How am I protecting that, right? And on-prem may not be the solution. So I'm actually interested. That may be a whole other topic for another show. Because, legacy apps are always the thing that keeps folks like myself up at night. It's one of those where sometimes, I'm held to what the application vendor's allowing me to do, number one. And I can't quite get the patching levels or the upgrade levels that I need.
Right.
But how do I get that application to a point where, number one, I feel secure enough that that it's protected while we're trying to uproot that application.
And that's where we had a security. Right? That's where we had a security incident. Yeah, and that comes down to configuration management. Also, the nice part is, like in our case, there was a database like stuffed in it. When we put it in the cloud, the move to Amazon's RDS service was like painless. It was like, oh, now we don't have to worry about all this with the data, and that was easy. So I'm kind of biased. I like that path, but it's not going to be for everyone's applications.
And there are some applications, and there's ones that I'm thinking about now, that it's going to take a year plus to migrate away to our new business application. How do I ensure that it's protected while we're making that migration, right? Because there's a lot to it. We're taking existing processes and trying to modernize those processes. We're trying to take advantage of a new application, but how do you port the process in the old application?
You can write a lot of code. If I'm writing it, Jason, it's 2 years at least.
Yeah.
Which is why we're hiring a developer.
That's right. Boom. That's right. Hey, I've been a developer. I was full-time developer on a project for a customer, and then that's when I figured out that I didn't want to be a full-time developer. And I love programming, but I was like, I don't want to do the full-time developer thing. And thankfully, I found security, which still lets me do some development, which is fun.
Yeah. On the application and data security side, the biggest theme was integrity and trust. Kind of the provenance issues. How do you prevent from the malicious committer? How do you make sure the integrity of open source is there? Same thing with data, right? As we move into more analytics algorithms, machine learning, artificial intelligence based, then the integrity of the data becomes really important, because if you're tainting the data, that becomes a big issue for the outcomes on the other side of all these algorithms, right? And so lots of conversations about integrity and trust of not only application and the components of application in the supply chain, but then just your core data. Where is it coming from? Which I think are really big issues.
Matt, it's interesting. This came up in a briefing with Aqua Security, and they're partnered with White Source. And I asked the question, I'm like, so if I buy Aqua to secure all my containers, it goes in my CI/CD pipeline. I'm like, do I need to go license? And they're like, no, it's an OEM. Like, you get that. I was like, that's actually really cool. They also have partnerships with the secrets vaults as well to make sure that that's being managed properly. And so I think it speaks to your point of like validating everything in this new world requires a system that's very well thought out, that has these capabilities. And to my previous point, like, do I have to get 3 different vendors to secure my OS, my container ecosystem, and my app? Here's Aqua saying, well, you can come to us, and we've got a more encompassing solution, and that was turns out to be one of their differentiators in the market. They painted the picture of the market, Aqua, Twistlock, and then everyone else, which, I mean, good for them. I mean, like, if you don't think you're going to win, like, you're not going to win, right? So I give them a lot of credit for that. There's obviously lots of, other players out there. Sysdig is a sponsor as well, that make great technology. But I think that what may occur is the buyer is going to go for a more consolidated solution rather than managing more vendors in this realm. Right. And Matt, you were in this space, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to see more of this capability embedded in these new application security guys because the supply chain, the leverage of open source and the use of it creates a whole new issue around securing aspects of that supply chain as your code's being built, because you're borrowing code, not necessarily building it yourself.
Yes.
So this was a conference that you had a lot of great minds from government and private sector there, right? I'm very interested to see where in the data security portion, did blockchain even come up as a topic?
Blockchain was only mentioned briefly around aspects of potentially allowing visibility into challenges around the supply chain. Is one use case that I think blockchain is viable, but we did not have any panels on blockchain. I think people are still trying to figure out the security uses of blockchain, but the ability to provide that visibility and transparency into something like the supply chain, in the case of software or data or some other things, is a potential valid use case. But that's as deep as we went.
Okay, that tells a lot.
Yeah. We did spend some time on machine learning, artificial intelligence, but here's the twist that was interesting. Most people are using those algorithms for defense. And what the government proposed was, what if we use that capability for offense? Because the hacker community probably will at some point.
Oh, I think they already are, Matt. They're in some capacities. And it's, I don't have all the details, but certainly in the briefings with various vendors and talking to the community, attackers are already there.
Yeah. And so how do we then change our mindset? And how do we leverage machine learning, artificial intelligence to actually help us more on the offensive side than just always looking at it from a defensive perspective? It was an interesting way to think about it. And the example he used is brilliant, by the way. And there is a startup out here that's going to take this and run with it. He used the concept of the drones, the automated drones, where its job was literally you put it into a room and it would map out the room. It would find it all on its own. It didn't know it in advance, had no idea. And the concept was, can I take that same drone, drop it into my network, and now go do things like asset discovery, classification of asset and data in my network, and things that would help me prepare to protect my environment better, but use it in a little more offensive way to actually let it go out and discover things and then bring that data back, which improves my defenses. I was like, I never thought about it that way. That
would be great if it was one tool that could do it all. Right now, I have tools to do that on the network. I have tools to do that on the host. I have tools to do that for data classification. They're all separate tools, right? And we have to kind of bring them all together to get one, I call it context of our entire ecosystem, right? But if it's in one place, one tool, one pane of glass, that would be outstanding.
Yeah, we'll see. On some of the big topics, we talked government and industry collaboration. Obviously, we know the importance of it, but I think the challenge that the industry has right now is that the government's not giving back. And the government agencies have actually said, look, you're right, we're not giving the data back. When I get an indicator of compromise as a CISO on the industry side, what's the one thing you want with that indicator? You want context.
Absolutely.
Right, and you're not getting it.
Right.
And so that's where I think some of the collaboration is still falling down. We're fine sharing with the government, but the government's not sharing some of those.
Sharing back. Yeah, that's unfortunate. I mean, because a lot of where the public sector came into having a lot of these ISACs and at least from the government perspective, the public sector's perspective, was to have that mutual sharing, right? Like the MSI stack, the multi-state ISAC. That was to have that back and forth sharing. And if we're not doing it at a higher level, That's a shame, right? Because again, that give and take, that context is only going to make us stronger as a nation, to be honest with you.
Yeah, agreed. One of the most interesting sessions of the day was former FBI agent who just gave us really an in-depth understanding of the actual human espionage that's actually going on, not only in our agencies, but also in our corporations.
Yeah.
And we know who the actors are, but it is eye-opening to understand that the way they're infiltrating networks is not just technology anymore.
Sure.
They are using people very effectively to get embedded into either a federal agency or into your organization to leak data out. And it was just a scary thought of we focus so much on the technology and the hacking based approach to get in, but they're doing it through pure human element side.
Yep. Yeah, taking advantage of the human weakness, right?
I hope you have copious notes on that for our webcast on Wednesday.
I do have some interesting notes on it.
Okay,
and it's amazing. I've been a part of a few briefings about that as well, and because I sit on Congressman Langevin's advisory committee here in Rhode Island, and he actually started the cybersecurity caucus in Washington D.C. as a co-founder of the caucus, and one of the presentations I didn't even realize what a threat there is right now to our maritime industry, to shipping, right? Shipping across the world. The threats that are out there, and again, it's not just technology. They're using the human element to actually steal information about routes that ships are taking, so that they can be intercepted and things of that nature. I didn't even realize that the maritime industry was under such attack. It's unbelievable.
Yep. And the last big topic, obviously, was board of directors and security. We actually had the CEO of Deloitte come in and talk about it from his perspective, which was really interesting because think about Deloitte advises a lot of board members. But there was a really good session. I can't get into the details because of who was on the board, but the one takeaway I got from this was there's two big roles the board can play when it comes to cybersecurity. One is before the breach and really aligning the business and the strategy on how you're going to protect your assets, which we all talk about. I think we know that there needs to be a closer alignment with security in the business to deliver business goals. But then the other side is post-breach. Let's say there is a breach for some reason. The board then has to manage communication and handling post-breach. And then there's this thing in the middle during the breach that they should just get the heck out of the way and let the executive team deal with it. And I thought that was a really good summary of where the board plays from a cybersecurity perspective and where they shouldn't.
Yeah, no, I mean that would be great to have as an educational type curriculum, right? How do we teach the board what role they play, right? And I think right now there is no framework or standard that really pinpoints here's best practice for that. That's why you start seeing board of directors getting involved in, the operational side of incident response, where they probably shouldn't be, right? They should be worrying about how they communicate out and the brand and making sure they're bringing in the right agencies to support the executive team when they need it, right? The financial side of it. But yeah, no, that'd be an interesting topic to dig deeper on. I'd love to hear more about that.
I'm working on a couple potential interview segments for this show. Probably Q3 time frame. I've got a couple different angles on that to actually bring in somebody either from the board, which was on this panel, or another one that advises boards to really have this conversation.
Yeah,
so
that'd be great.
I'm working on trying to get somebody confirmed for Q3 on that topic.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that was besides a little cigar smoking and a great opportunity to catch up with just some really brilliant minds. And just great folks in the industry. That was 2 days in a nutshell.
Awesome. Very good. Great topics.
Awesome.
Thanks. All right, we'll take a quick break and then cover the leadership and communications articles for this week.